Today we'll be discussing the Apple TV show, The Studio, and we'll be discussing how doctors are perceived by the general public. This is Doctor versus Comedian. I'm Dr. Asif Doja, and this is the Doctor of Laughs.
Perceived very well by the general public, because I am not a doctor.
Ali Hassan. Now, every episode I pick a topic for Ali from comedy and entertainment, and I question him about it. Then Ali picks a topic from medicine and health and grills me on that topic. So today we'll be discussing the hit Apple TV show, The Studio. And then, based on an episode from the show, we'll be discussing how the general public views doctors. We already kind of can guess what Ali's general viewpoint is on doctors.
I'm a student. I'm a student of the world. You know, what do I know about anything?
Well, Ali, we'll get to that in the second half, but I want to talk to you about two quick things before we get going. So this show, The Studio, is all about, Hollywood making movies. They do touch on some of the current controversies about how, there's no artistic
merit
in movies. It's all just about making money. And then there's also this idea about how no one's going to movie theaters. They talk about streaming. They talk about Amazon. They talk about lots of the AI comes up in it. So lots of these things come up. So have you heard, Ali, or have your kids seen this Minecraft movie? And have you heard about what's going on with the Minecraft movie?
No, tell me everything. I would never be inclined to see it. My kids wouldn't really either. I'd be very surprised if they asked. Unless there's something sexy and juicy you're about to tell me, maybe they might.
What? Oh,
they like sexy and juicy. What do you want? Those are my children.
So this movie is based on the video game Minecraft. It's a huge hit. Jack Black's in it. Jason Momoa. It's doing extremely well. It's made almost $1 billion at the box office, $930 million by my last count. But that's not what I want to talk about. So apparently what happens, someone just told me this the other day, when the kids usually go to the theater, there's a scene that comes up with chicken jockey. That's which I think is someone riding a chicken, and what you're supposed to do at that point
plausible,
is take your popcorn and throw it at the screen, throw it all over.
I did hear that. I didn't know the connection to chicken jockey. I knew that there was a...
So I don't know. I could be wrong about the whole, what happens with, I haven't seen the movie. So apparently what I heard is that, the movie theaters are like, if you throw this popcorn, you're going to be kicked out of the movie theater, and they're warning people ahead of time. And I'm like, what are you doing? What you finally have, I want to get your thoughts on this, but I can't keep mine in here, Ali.
Interesting.
You finally have people wanting to go in person to a movie. Nobody wants to go to a movie in person. I saw 2 movies in the theater last year, Ali. Like, I've stopped going to, even though I love movies. So you have people wanting to go to the movie theater to have this experience with everybody else. And guess where they're getting the popcorn? They're not bringing their popcorn from home. They're buying your stupid popcorn at the theater, which costs $25 for one bucket. Then they're throwing it around. Okay, it's a waste of food. I understand. But how often are you leaving a theater and there's like buckets of popcorn, spilled popcorn? People don't finish their popcorn anyway. Why don't you charge them for one of those big, huge, those big, long, huge tubes of popcorn? Charge someone like $35 for those, and they can just throw it all around. Like, and you're probably getting kids who are going back to the theater to keep doing this, like Rocky Horror Picture Show. Like you have, it's just so ridiculous. Like you have money lying on the table. So anyway, I'm sorry, Ali.
Wow, real thoughts. I thought you were also going to say, I thought you were about to say, and you probably have kids going back to the theater to eat some of that popcorn that's on the ground. I was like, what? Anyway, you didn't go there, which is great. Interesting thought. I'm more of a guy who thinks about the working class. So if you go in a different direction, but I think about the people who have to clean it up. But then that leads me back to sort of what you're saying. They've got to clean up popcorn anyway. Now they have to clean up, 20 times more popcorn.
Huge amounts, yeah.
But they've always had to do that anyway. They do have to clean up. Half the people are not, more than half are probably not cleaning up after themselves. Maybe the theater is saying that because they feel they have to. so that it doesn't become something that's happening in all the theaters. But yeah, it is a little bit. I hear what you're saying. You're looking a gift horse in the mouth, or what is it? You're punching a gift horse in the face.
That's it.
Something
No,
like that?
that's it. Well,
Yeah, it's you got a good thing here. Look,
Right.
if I'm thinking of like if I ran a theater, I think I would say we have to put out a statement. Please do not throw your popcorn. Will we actually do anything if they do? No, but we should at least say that so that, whatever, Schindler's List 2 is not coming out and people are also like throwing popcorn. We don't want this to be part of the zeitgeist now.
Agreed. I totally agree. I think there's also this factor that, like when you take a plane ride, like the minimal cleaning that happens between when your plane lands and people get off and then the next group of people on there
Minimal might even be a strong word at this point.
it is. I mean, you just hope, you pray that no one actually had to use that vomit bag and put it back in there. Because if they did, it's probably going to still be there, right? Like when
That's
you get
funny.
back.
My thing is more head and hair diseases. Like I'm always in a hoodie. I don't know how these people like they're in their business suits going for a business meeting. I'm like, I'm not sure I could ever be on a plane without a hoodie, and I don't even have hair. But just the thought of like some lice,
it's your bare
crawling
skin
onto
touching
somebody's-
that.
It's gross. It's gross.
Yeah,
but
the more
the
you
lice
think about
won't
it, the more
attach.
disgusting.
The lice won't
Yeah,
attach.
true.
But
You are lucky.
there are other diseases. I don't want my sweat mingling with somebody else's head sweat from the plane.
The more you think about that, it's brutal. So, I think that's the other thing. The movie theaters have this minimal cleaning. They just want to turn around quickly, get to the next show. But I'm like, well, maybe add in 20 minutes there, and then you can actually encourage people to come to the movie theater.
I think it's more than 20 minutes.
Okay, well, listen, man, I don't know. So, okay, that was my first thing I want to ask you about. And then one more thing before we get onto the studio. Studio is, of course, stars Seth Rogen, and he's also the executive producer. And he does this with his producing partner, Evan Goldberg.
Also a director of many episodes.
That's right. And they both have directed the movie. I mean, they are big producers. Lots of things that you've seen, Superbad, Pineapple Express, and shows that are on TV right now that I particularly like, Invincible and The Boys, and they've been friends since they were in high school. Now, Ali, you have a connection to Evan Goldberg, and do you know what it is?
It's pretty loosey-goosey, but I was in the movie Goon that he wrote or co-wrote.
Yeah, he co-wrote with Jay Baruchel.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't even know that Jay Baruchel wrote that.
Did you not know that? Okay,
that movie. Yeah, I only found that out when I was researching this because I was looking up Evan Goldberg's movies. And I'm like, oh wow, he co-wrote that. So yeah, okay. So did you ever meet him? Or
I don't believe I did. Or Jay Baruchel. I've met Jay Baruchel several times, man. Jay Baruchel was in the scene with me also, and then I was in another one of his shows, Man Seeking Woman.
Oh, right. Okay.
A few episodes of that. So yeah, no, Jay Baruchel.
So that's your connection. So did you call Evan Goldberg up and get some?
I did. He said, "Never call me on this number again." No, I
He
don't
said,
know
"Who
Evan
is
Goldberg
this?"
to call him, but I do love this story. They met. Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen met in bar mitzvah class, which I didn't know that was a thing. I know, as I'm sure you do too, Asif, when somebody's converting to Judaism, they take a long series of classes, right? Unlike our religion, Islam, which has a pretty low bar to entry, got to say a couple of things you're in. Judaism is very like you got to know, and you wind up having converts who know tons more than the actual people they're marrying. But I didn't know there was bar mitzvah class also. That's where they met, age 12, bar mitzvah class.
I can imagine because the kids, because of everything they have to recite, they probably got to get prepared for this. So it makes sense.
Yeah, I thought an in-home tutor might do the job. Right?
Yeah, I think nowadays there's a lot of Zoom tutoring. That's what my friends have told me.
Sure.
There's a lot of Zoom tutoring, and especially with the pandemic. But so that's how they.
I think they had struck up a kinship immediately, probably already into weed by that age, right? Couple of West Coast boys, 12-year-old, coming from like some degree of money. And yeah, there was probably not a lot of other people in the class with the same perspective. It's just interesting. It's one of those things, like who knows where one of them could have sat in the class and you sit in the same class, you could have sat somewhere else, not had that connection, not found each other. and we could have not had this incredible depth of work that they've done. Like Evan Goldberg was already huge at Goon. Goon was, 12 years ago now. There was already Superbad. There was all, and then in the following years, Pineapple Express and all that. I mean, the last decade has been amazing.
I know. They're great. And I would say I always at least check out whatever they have going on. It's not always for me. I haven't loved everything they've done, but I'll always check it out and see what's up with that. So,
did you not love the great Canadian pottery throwdown?
No, apparently that was actually not bad. And Seth Rogen is a guest judge because he actually is a potter.
He loves pottery.
I had no idea. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, why don't we get started right now talking about the studio? Okay, so the studio. We'll get into our thoughts about the show in a second, but let's talk a bit about the creation of it and what you and I have each read. We've read some articles. We've listened to some interviews with Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. So one of the things that was interesting about this is Seth Rogen was saying in one of his interviews that they haven't really written about their own personal lives that much. They did in Superbad, and apparently they wrote Superbad when they were teenagers, which is crazy when you think about it. And then they needed a couple hits before they got that eventually made. And he's like, we haven't really gone back to this. And it was when Seth Rogen was in The Fabelmans. Of course, I forgot he's in The Fabelmans. He plays a very interesting, pivotal character in Steven Spielberg's childhood and his family and kind of what happens with his parents and this character played by Seth Rogen. Won't ruin it for people who haven't seen the movie. And he thought, like, wow, this is the personal life of Steven Spielberg on the screen. And so he said, well, I should do something that's more personal, which, is about our own lives. And so that's one of the ways they kind of got into this topic of the studio.
Correct. Yes, I also heard him talking about that. And it's interesting because if you watch the studio, you might say, this is not personal. This is just amazing, right. a satirical send-up of Hollywood. But there's a great interview that Seth Rogen does on NPR on the show Fresh Air. And he talks about how many people he's met over the years that were basically versions of all the people who are in this film. And I 100% believe that. I don't think it's... So, the number from Canada to the US, the number that I've always settled on in my mind is 5. So, for example, if you write a pilot in Canada and get a certain amount of pay for it, you get 5 times more in the US. If you're on hold for a show, there's a certain type of hold where a production owns you. And they say you cannot do any other show for the next few months because we own you for the duration of this.
So that's what a hold is.
So that hold, whatever that amount is in Canada, it's 5 times more, right? So we're talking about, like, let's say 20,000 to 100,000, a significant amount. And I have met producers, and I have met specifically, industry execs and network execs who are a certain way. Multiply that by 5, and that's what we see on screen in the studio. And I feel like this is as believable as it gets. Certainly not all of them, but these people exist. This level of anxiety, this level of drama, this level of, like, stubbornness or self-importance and narcissism, all of it. Yeah. Incredible. Yeah.
And I guess there haven't been too many shows. There was the movie The Player many years ago, almost, I think, 30 plus years ago. And then there's the Larry Sanders Show, obviously. Which
I'm so happy they mentioned that in their interviews. Not on NPR necessarily, I don't think he did, but in various interviews, they mentioned Larry Sanders, which I really think to this day, one of my favorite shows of all time, one of the most influential shows. And I think we did an episode on Larry Sanders early on in our...
We did one, not on Larry Sanders, but Gary Shandling.
On Gary Shandling. Yeah. I mean, his contribution cannot be underestimated. And that show, if you are an avid consumer of television comedy, it's to be watched. You know, Jason Bateman has given that. Arrested Development gave its credit to all these great shows. They will trace back to something that Gary Shandling did, which was so original at the time. And I want to believe it still stands the test of time. Because before that, we had never seen actors being brave enough to make a complete mockery of themselves.
Right.
Right? Like David Duchovny, we had only seen FX. Oh, no, not FX. What's that called? That show David Duchovny was on for so long.
X-Files.
X-Files. Oh, God.
FX
Sorry,
is a
David.
network.
Sorry, David. He's listening. We'd only seen that version of him. He's quite serious, right? Quite dark. And maybe an interview here and there. Then we see this super obnoxious version of David. He's playing quote unquote himself, but it's such an obnoxious. I mean, there's 50 examples of that in Larry Sanders, but that's what made it amazing. Like you just never saw actors willing to do this. The self-importance was all gone. They were making an absolute mockery of themselves, and the studio doing a good job of that too.
And so that's interesting because Seth Rogen is the main character and he does make fun of himself all the time. Like it's a, you know, he's not a studio head in real life, but you know, he certainly is a producer, executive producer, has his own film production company. So, you know, he kind of sees himself in that and he thinks the more he makes fun of himself, you know, his real self, the more funny it is. Like that, just the realism in comedy, I guess. So he knows, like, you know, there's one episode where Seth Rogen's character is going to visit a movie set, and the director is Sarah Polley, played by Sarah Polley, who's amazing in it. Like I read an interview with her where she's like, I haven't acted in years because I just had no interest. I prefer directing, and you know, and she really had no interest. But when they told her
you can act like a director,
yeah,
she was like, I think I can pull this off. Yeah,
she was great. Yeah. And so he's really making fun of himself, and you know, the joke is often on him. And you can see, like, this character that Seth Rogen plays, Matt Rennick, he wants everyone to like him. His desire to be liked is so extreme, and it creates a lot of cringe comedy, very similar to like a Curb Your Enthusiasm kind of cringe. Though I think you like Matt Rennick as a character more than, say, Larry David.
I would say I do, certainly.
Yeah.
I think I've said this on the podcast that I can watch 2 Curb episodes, maybe 3, and then I need to take a long break so that I don't get too much in a negative, insane mood, you know, and maybe become a version of that myself. Whereas Matt, I mean, every episode of this I watched, I was like, I'm ready for the next one. Of course, that's not how the studio is doing it. They are giving you old school.
Yeah, every week.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. Like, I mean, the plot is basically this character, Seth Rogen's character, becomes the head of the studio after the former head, who was his mentor, played by Catherine O'Hara, is fired. And the CEO of the studio is great, is played by Bryan Cranston. He's amazing in this. And the cast is just great, right? And so you see Seth Rogen's character, Matt, with all the people who work for him, just trying to move forward to get movies made, and something ends up kind of complicating the process. And there's Ike Barinholtz, who I think people have seen in lots of different things. He was in the Mindy Project, a bunch of other things. He's Sal Saperstein, the vice president of production. Chase Sui Wonders, who's Matt's former assistant, who now becomes a junior executive, and Catherine Hahn as Maya Mason, who's the head of marketing. And there's other people as well. It's funny. I would say that Ike Barinholtz and Catherine Hahn are kind of playing very similar characters that they always play, but I love these types of characters they play. Like Ike Barinholtz is kind of like this slight doofus, kind of a jerk, kind of aggressive, but you still like him, but because, you know, inside he's deeply flawed. And Catherine Hahn, you know, that is the character she plays in almost everything, right? Like the aggressive, push everything forward, you know, sarcastic presence in every scene.
I love it. I love it so much. But yeah, it is true. Like you know, I don't know. I really struggle to say that they're not showing a particular range, but what they're doing what they do best in this series.
Mm-hmm. And there's tons of cameos as well. And in reading some interviews with the writers, they had to really be a bit careful. They didn't want to overdo the cameos. And it's funny, one of the writers says, we try to not see it as a less sexy version of Entourage, but a more sexy version of The Office. And by sexy, they just mean with, taking place in Hollywood and with the cameos and things like that. So they really said it's really just a workplace comedy, but you have all these stars come in. And I thought the celebrities overall were quite good who appear in this, and especially a lot of them are poking fun of themselves. Like, so Olivia Wilde appears in this, and she is directing a movie, and of course she's acting totally crazy as the director. And there's lots of rumors about her acting quite difficult on set as director. If you've heard any of this stuff with her and Harry Styles and some of this gossip that's gone around. So I was very surprised, but she totally leans into it. And Sarah Polley, again, she actually had to tell them, I want to be less likable. You've written me as too likable. I want to lose it on Seth Rogen's character by the end of the scene. So I don't know. What did you think about these cameos?
I thought everybody nailed it. Not once did I say, oh, that was a weak performance. I feel like they all brought their A game. You haven't mentioned Zoe Kravitz yet, who in the 8th episode does, it's so good. It's so good. There's so much meta of what's happening here. It's truly unbelievable. I'm going to spoil the whole thing because I just can't keep it in anymore, Asif. I don't remember the last time. Maybe Marvelous Miss Maisel, but I don't remember the last time I felt so excited watching a show. I really, I can't wait to watch it a second time.
So that's interesting. I want to ask you a couple of production details about this, which may, get to why you're so excited. So they do a whole bunch of one take shots throughout the series. And in fact, one whole episode, the episode with Sarah Polley is trying to do a shot in one take for the movie, like the movie that they're portraying in the show. And it keeps getting ruined by Seth Rogen's character by accident. So, or on purpose or whatever. And so what did you think about these one shot, one take things? Because I do think it adds to the excitement of the show and the tension.
Are you asking me, or you just want to tell your own answer, huh?
Sorry.
Stole my answer.
Do you agree with me or
no?
not?
I do agree with you. I think that it's no small feat. This is the problem. What show were we just talking about where we were talking about the one show?
Adolescence. So I do want to, I'll get to that in a second.
You'll get to that in a second. But so we talked at length about the amount of choreography and preparation and rehearsal required. In episode 8 of this show, it's like you're at the Golden Globes. There are a lot of moving parts. There are waiters walking by, servers, all kinds of different things. There's, crew and all these people sitting there. It's an insane undertaking to get all these people to make this thing go. And you're filming stuff that you're filming, right? Which is the Larry Sanders thing too. With that Sarah Polley, Sarah Polley is a director directing a film. So you are filming a film set. So you have, just the amount of sort of wires and crew that you have to walk around. It is a crazy undertaking. They did it so well. So the question is, why do all that? And I think it's exactly what you're saying. It's about a rhythm. And this is my favorite thing in comedy, comedians who have a rhythm on stage. You can sort of, the way they speak, the pacing they have, you don't even realize it sometimes, and you just get drawn into it. And this thing, the rhythm of this, the way it is, it's really, really, there's a musicality, there's a tempo, there's an energy to it. And I think it's all because of these oneers, as they're called.
Well, yeah, I agree. The episodes fly by. They go by so quickly, and you realize when it's over, you're like, I'm upset that it's over because I was enjoying that so much. Very short episodes. I think the longest one is 45 minutes, but they're usually 30 minutes or less. And it's interesting what you said about the musicality, because they have a very specific score they use in this, which is kind of a jazzy type score, lots of drums. And it kind of melds into that concept of what you're
And
saying.
the jazz drummer is the person that keeps the time, right? That keeps the tempo. You got jazz is so experimental and it can be so everywhere and so many things can happen, but the jazz drummer keeps the tempo. And this is, it's you barely notice the music. This is why I want to watch it a second time. There's so many parts to this. I can't believe, and by the way, you probably know this already. Greenlit a second season.
For second season, yeah, and it sounds like they have a lot of, people they're hoping to get on the show. I mean, in terms of big directors, it was Scorsese, and then they have a couple up and coming directors and a lot of actors who are directors like Zoe Kravitz and Olivia Wilde. But I think they said they'd love to get Spielberg and Tarantino. But again, it has to fit their story that they're trying to tell, right? Like for the Zoe Kravitz casting, they needed an actor who's done some movies, but not, as a director, but not too many movies, but who in theory could win a Golden Globe, but hasn't won a Golden, so they had to try and find the right people. And I think they did. So I think they're very smart in their casting. So I totally agree with you with those one take shots though. Now, just so people are clear, it's not like the whole episode is one take, but they'll have at least 5 or 6 long tracking shots in every episode. The problem, I feel really bad for Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg because this came out right after Adolescence. And Adolescence, they did the maximum you could do, which is a full hour long, the only thing you could do is just try and do a longer 2-hour movie or something, but they just did it so much. So I must admit, after that, I almost wasn't even paying attention in this one about when it was all one shot and when it's not. And maybe you're not supposed to. Maybe they don't want to call your attention to it. Maybe they just want you to feel that energy and tension of the one shot.
I would argue that the majority of people would not consider that.
Okay.
Most people don't watch thinking, where is the director in all of this? Where is the grip standing? How are they getting the audio? Right? Nobody thinks,
right.
Watch it. It's almost a distraction to think like that, which is why, again, want to watch a second time so that I can really soak in those kind of things, like how they must have done this, how they must have done that. But yeah, I don't think you're supposed to. It's just supposed to make you feel something that you barely realize.
And like we said, it's that tension, that awkwardness especially when Seth Rogen's character is trying to get the approval. The other behind the scenes thing I want to ask you about was the writing room for this. It's Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg, and 3 other writers, and that's it. So what do you think? It's quite a small writing group for. I mean, I have seen shows where there's one writer and they wrote everything, but that's not very common. So what do you think of that? I know you're involved in a writing room right now. And
I think that's 5 is an amazing number, especially if 2 of those 5 are Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen, right? These are very senior writers. They have a vision of what they want to do. And so the other 3 are just sort of supporting, throwing out ideas for shows and then creating. But as far as structure goes, you need people who understand story structure. And then you can have more junior people who aren't as strong on the structure of a show, but can be like, what about an idea? What if we were at the Golden Globes? What if we were here? And then to go scene by scene and punch it up and add more comedy. Would it be funny if this? How about this as an ending? Oh, yeah, but what if it ends this way? She does actually say this that he wanted her to say, but he never hears, and blah, 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 whatever the case might be. I think 5 is a great room if you have 2 senior experienced people like that. And I imagine they brought on 3. I didn't look at the other writers. I imagine they brought on people who are pretty well versed in comedy with certain,
one of them was a writer on Veep, and I can't remember.
Oh my God. Perfect. Perfect. That's great pedigree.
Yeah, exactly. So, just to wrap things up for this section. So, Ali, your thoughts? I even kind of said it, but
I said it. I love it. I love this show so much. I think started watching it a few weeks ago in the midst of this Canadian elbows up feeling. So to see Seth Rogen, written by Evan Goldberg, Catherine O'Hara is in this. Sarah Polley comes in early. I felt this Canadian pride as I was watching it, which is an additional thing that has nothing to do with anything generally. But it does, you still feel good when you see people who are a product of your country just doing the best the best work. And again, Catherine O'Hara, as always, just absolutely flawless and ridiculously entertaining. And I mean, I can't think of a thing I didn't like about this show. From the writing to the casting to the performances to the all these different directorial choices. I don't know. This is just like a really exciting thing to watch.
Yeah, I really liked it too. So much so that I texted Ali. I'm like, "Are you watching the studio?" He's like, "Yeah." So I was watching it when I was in France. I watched most of the episodes there and caught up on them. So yeah, and we both were watching it independently of each other. I think there's some there's a episode where Ike Barinholtz's character and Chase Zoe Wonder's character kind of are having a feud. I thought that one was a bit too broad for me. It was still fine. I would give it like a B, but it was a bit too broad for me. But other than that, and then there's another episode, which I guess we'll segue into right now, that I thought was a bit hard to believe. And so that's the only thing that, again, I love this show. I think it's great. I do wonder about how sometimes other people treat Seth Rogen's character. Like, he's the head of a studio and people often treat him very badly, like especially the actors. And I'm just like, is that a real thing? Do actors actually, like, I can imagine them, pretending to be nice but complaining about his behind his back.
Yeah.
But the actors, like, like Zac Efron basically tells him off to his face.
I was willing to believe that because of what a desperate, sort of pathetic character he is. Right? He shows his weaknesses immediately. He's not like Bryan Cranston. We see what a studio head can be. Right? Which is complete no nonsense, very direct, will interrupt you no matter what you're talking about, has barely any time for anybody. That's a person you're going to be a little bit more weary around. You're not going to let, your feelings out. But Seth Rogen comes in like, hey, I love everybody. I'm trying to create art, and I hope this person likes me. Do you think they like me? Very pathetic. And I think because of that, you get, you reap what you sow, and he gets that treatment. Well, and he also starts things. You're about to talk about that one episode that you found not believable, which is where he's dating a doctor. Yeah, and the way the doctors talk to him, but he started that. True. He started it. True. He had to add this idea that his work is comparable to the work. Yeah. That that pediatric oncologists are doing.
That's right, exactly. So
now he opened.
You're right. I agree with you. It's that self-deprecating and manner that he has that I think I agree with you, because the whole episode is predicated on this one quote which he says in the first episode, Seth Rogen's character, which is based on a real quote from a studio executive him and Evan Goldberg met when they were just starting off in Hollywood, which is, the person says, "I got into this because I love movies, but now I have this fear that my job is to ruin them." So yeah, that is the character in a nutshell.
Yeah. So our tie-in today between the entertainment topic and the medical topic exists, and it's what we just mentioned, this idea of Seth Rogen being a little sort of dismissive, probably in your view, Asif, of what pediatric oncologists do, and pediatric oncologists being a little bit dismissive of what Seth Rogen does. And this brings out the discussion about the perception of doctors. And so your thoughts were, is this how people perceive doctors?
Totally. And just so people understand where this episode is, Seth Rogen's character is invited to a gala, and he's dating a pediatric oncologist. And then he basically says to them in the show, what I do is just as important as what you do, essentially. He does say that, which is crazy. But I thought they were kind of talking down to him a little bit, which I thought was a bit unrealistic. This is what I was saying is the unrealistic point. I wouldn't act like that if I met Seth Rogen at a gala. And he does go to lots of neurology galas because he has a charity called Hilarity for Charity, which he organizes with his wife to raise awareness about Alzheimer's disease and treatments and brain health. So he goes to a lot of things and meets a lot of neurologists. I'm like, yeah, but I wouldn't talk down to you. I would probably talk your ear off about how much I love all your movies and, how'd you get into making comic book movies and all this stuff and TV shows. So
right. You're a lover of entertainment, though.
Yeah, exactly. So but I guess there's lots of like doctors who like have no time for this, this entertainment, and because they're busy, saving lives or whatever. I don't know. I thought they were a bit too conceited, but then I thought, well, listen, Seth Rogen interacts with doctors a lot. He clearly has a perception of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's where this section comes out, as you said, is like, how does the public actually perceive doctors?
Well, I know I've heard in the past, and I was certainly thinking about that during this episode. I have heard in the past people are like, doctors are extremely boring. They only, all they talk about are their investments and their money and this kind of stuff. Certainly not my experience, right? I don't think you've ever discussed one investment you've made in your life with me. We've known each other our entire lives.
Oh, wait, should I be investing money?
And there you go. That's why oh boy. And our other friends who are doctors who are common friends. I wouldn't say that about them at all. But when doctors get together, what do I know about what happens there? And I think that's what somebody was saying. They were, so loosely connected through their husband or maybe their son, something. They were connected to the medical community and talked about how boring it is to hang out with a room full of doctors who are just discussing their investments and their money and that kind of thing.
So doctors, they will often start talking about medicine very quickly, and a lot of spouses, as you said, spouses of doctors,
yes,
or partners of doctors who are not in medicine, they often do hate going. They're like, I'm not going to go.
I mean, but that's nothing. That's
any field.
That's any field. Imagine 5 people who are in entertainment. Yeah. But imagine 5 people who went to high school together. All right. And then the 6th person comes along like, oh, guys, you keep talking about Mrs. Sutherland who spanked one of you. I mean, guys, what are you doing? This is crazy. Can we talk about something else? So that's not a thing. But the money thing is a thing because, and I've heard that more than once, but I was thinking about that when I was talking. And the money sort of became more the thing than the life saving in a way, because it's a fundraiser.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And Ronnie Cheng, comedian Ronnie Cheng, one of my favorites, has this great joke about, I think it's broadly about Asians, but he's talking about the Chinese. And he goes, when Chinese parents want their children to be doctors, helping people is the last reason on their list for why they want their children to be doctors. It's a very, very funny joke. And way too real for a lot of people to fully digest, but of course it is true. So I think there is that a little bit too, like this idea of like self-importance. But when it boils down to what it boils down to, it's like, well, you might be only doing this work because this work gets you the other things. It's not the work itself then. And I don't think that applies to you at all. I think this is a more general statement. I'll also tell you about an event where I was doing comedy, one of the worst bombs I've ever had. It was in Houston. It was a massive medical and financial company. It was 90% South Asians. And they were at the time, this is many years ago, it's 2012, 2013, they were furious at President Obama at the time. Because he was trying to make with the Obamacare, this guy came on stage and he said, and President Obama wants to stop us from owning hospitals. That's what he said. What kind of president would do this? And they all cheered and they hated Obama. Like there were reasons for brown people to hate Obama. For example, how many brown people were killed when Obama was in power. I didn't see this coming. I'm just not a keen enough student of, health and medicine in the US. I'm talking about 1,200 people in a room were almost unanimously angry at President Obama because these doctors could not own chunks of hospitals or parts of however it was. Anyway, so it just went to show me, like, also how much money matters to certain communities, and when those certain communities are also doctors. So, I didn't find any of that episode unbelievable. In fact, it didn't ring true. Sorry. It reminded me of things I've heard about doctors. Again, have not experienced it, but I've heard plenty of them.
Doctors are funny because they start off
funny?
usually, well, I mean, I am.
The guy, yeah. The guy who did my vasectomy certainly fashioned himself to be quite a funny guy, which
Well,
I
I mean, what are you
semi
going to do if that's
appreciated. Yeah.
what you do all day? But listen, no, doctors are funny because they start off obviously going to medicine to be altruistic, but one of the, side effects of being a doctor is you end up making money. And doctors can complain about how much money they make as much as they want. They still are better off than the average person, in North America and Europe. So, so then because of that, then you become, as you said, kind of money focused. And some of those people then their viewpoint changes. Instead of being necessarily altruistic and patient centered, they're kind of money centered, and that can lead you to supporting political parties, say, that benefit you because now you're in a higher tax bracket, and so you want someone who's going to lessen taxes on people who make more money, things that decrease regulation. So anyway, it's an interesting thing. So I can see why people say that.
Right. So you've said your opinion, the general opinion on the field. I've said my general opinion, but what do people think? What's the word on the street? Is what we should be
So, and we
ourselves.
could keep saying anecdotes for ourselves and other people,
Yeah.
but I think what you're getting at is like, what's the research out there, right? And there's different ways that you can get the answer, right? So I'll talk to you about a couple different ways that we can do it. So one is just through surveys, right? So you've heard of hopefully Pew Research, PEW.
Pew pew pew. I have.
Yeah, that research. Yeah, it smells. No,
I was doing that. I was shooting bullets. Pew pew.
I know, but then Pew can be like
It does. Pepe Le Pew.
Pepe Le Pew. Yes, yeah. I saw it. What was I watching the other day? They had a Pepe Le Pew cartoon in it. And I'm like, that guy's pretty. Canceled, right?
Oh yeah, that guy was incredibly inappropriate.
I mean, gosh, like, I don't know, man. Anyway, getting back to Pew Research, not having to do with
An incel skunk.
laser. What'd you call it?
An incel skunk.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's probably an incel idol for the losers on the internet. Okay, anyway, getting back to Pew Research, the big research company. So this is a survey they did. And in the survey that was done, and there's a caveat to the survey, which I'll get to at the end of this little section, but they said 74% of Americans have a positive view of doctors. So survey of just average Americans. Okay, so that's pretty good. They said about half say doctors usually care about their best interest of the patients, and about 49% do a good job giving a diagnosis and treatment, and about 48% of respondents said that the doctors provide a fair and accurate information when making recommendations. I mean, you kind of would prefer it to be a bit higher than 50%, but only 15% said doctors are transparent about conflicts of interest. So in other words, like, is a drug company paying me to do this? And so they say often they're not, like most of the time they're not transparent about that. Only 12% said doctors admit and take responsibility for mistakes, but that's because we never make mistakes. So that's why it's only 12%.
Stop it.
And then of course, more trust in people over 50, versus younger people. They're less likely to be as trusting. And in terms of professional misconduct, more Blacks and Hispanics thought that professional misconduct was a problem amongst doctors as opposed to white. So you can see, because there, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, some distrust of the medical community. Now, Ali, there is a big caveat, as I said, to this data, this survey, because you have to guess about when it was done.
During COVID.
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
So you can imagine all these numbers are probably much lower in terms of, providing fair and accurate recommendations, scientific integrity, conflicts of interest, even a positive view of doctors. I'm pretty sure that it may have gone up, especially in the beginning of COVID, right? Like doctors risking their lives, a lot of them dying, especially when you think about what happened in Italy, New York City.
Gosh, yeah.
But then, of course, the anti-vax movement and everything. So anyway, so that's one way we can do it, is by looking at surveys, right? So another way we can do it is by those rating systems on the internet for doctors. Have you ever seen those, Ollie, like Health Grades or Rate My Doctor?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not on there, thankfully. Let's hope that stays that way.
Yeah,
I have some friends who are on it, like Anyway, some of them are positive, some of them are negative. One of them,
That I find, I don't know what the right answer is. And, I have a healthy mistrust of the medical community as well, Asif. That's been expressed many times on this podcast. But the rate my doctor, unfortunately, I'm not comfortable with that, because you also get the restaurant version of the person who never got their ranch dressing on Rate My Doctor, right? You get very entitled people who are like, I wanted to talk about 8 things, and that doctor only listened to 6 of the things that were in, doctors are like, look, I have a practice. I have this many people coming in today. Let's deal with one thing at a time, make another appointment for another thing. Certainly that helps a doctor financially, but it also helps a doctor see 20 people that day instead of 10.
Exactly, yeah.
All these kind of things. People are not thinking about that. It's a very me, me, me. We live in an entitled society. So the most entitled of people will come on and do the ratings. And I think that there's some, deep unfairness in that. So I'm not for that. But yes, I do know about these health grade systems.
Right. And apparently it's also very difficult once you get one of the ratings, if you disagree with it, to get something done about it. Or if it's a fake one or made up or something. So, and there's something else I want to talk to you about with regards to these ratings. So there's this website, Health Grades. So there's one study just came out a couple months ago. They looked at almost 350,000 online reviews of almost 170,000 physicians. Okay. But what they did was they looked to see if there was a difference between how female physicians were rated versus male physicians. And it's interesting. It's not maybe what you think. You think, okay, well, there's a stereotype that female physicians might be more compassionate, so they probably get better grades, right? But that's not what happened. Female physicians were more likely than male physicians to receive any comments about their interpersonal manner, whether positive or negative. In other words, it's not even mentioned for a lot of male physicians, and more likely to receive negative comments about their interpersonal manner. Again, maybe that's because people think that females
right.
should act
There's some
expectations,
unfair,
again,
obviously, but yeah.
Of course, yeah. They were female primary care doctors, so family doctors, were more likely to receive criticism about their interpersonal manner, and they were more likely, if there was criticism, they were more likely to be penalized with lower star ratings than the male ones. So even the males that had criticism, right, they didn't get a lower star rating.
He's still a good guy.
Yeah, exactly. And when it comes to technical competence, like surgical procedures or office procedures, females were more likely to be criticized, both family doctors and surgeons, and again, disproportionately criticized in the star ratings as opposed to male physicians. So, this kind of goes to what you're saying, right? There's inherent bias in these grading systems. And so there's actually another study, which was done in China, which also looked at the health rating website. And they looked at about 750,000 patient reviews from online medical platforms, but they used AI to analyze it. And they also looked at these websites had a picture of the doctor. Okay, so they used the facial expression kind of algorithms and analyzed those, and basically they found that if patients thought that a doctor looked warm and fuzzy type thing, then they give them higher ratings. If the physician had glasses on, it made them rate higher the physician's ability to make decisions and to be like a decision maker. And if physicians were smiling, then it weakened the perception of being an effective decision maker.
Wow.
All right. So they don't like people who smile. So they wanted kind of a more serious, right? Like, so it's just so interesting that they found that. Like, I don't know how you, it's not, none of these are intuitively obvious, right? We think, okay, yeah, women more caring, they should get better ratings. Okay, but they don't. Oh, smiling should make you seem like, oh, this is a competent person. But no, they want the serious look. That's the doctor I want to see.
Sure.
Just so strange.
Although, side note here a little bit, we do have a doctor shortage in this country, certainly family doctors. Does any of this matter? Because
right. Interesting question. You're right, because we're so desperate. And I think I've heard this before too, and I'm like, I don't think you can shortchange, the quality of care that people need. Let me use a different example. People are like, I don't care if a surgeon's a jerk to me. I just want the person who's going to be the best surgeon, the best cutter, no complications. That's all I want. I don't care if they're a jerk. Yeah, or you could have both. You could have, right, someone who is an excellent surgeon who's also very nice, because there's lots of those people out there too, right? And so I think that there's a way to look at that. So you're getting what everybody wants, but you have now helped me segue into kind of the last section I was going to talk about, which is another way to get people's perceptions is to actually do interviews and focus groups, right? And get the idea. So one of the ones I want to talk about is from the Mayo Clinic. So the Mayo Clinic has 3 different locations, in case you didn't know that, in the U.S. So they surveyed patients from all of the locations and then did interviews with them. They want to find out what kind of these patients think are ideal physician behaviors. So I'm going to go through them with you, Ali, and you tell me what you think. Do you agree or disagree? So there's 7 of them, okay? So they want a physician to be confident. What do you think of that?
I mean, that's probably, in my mind, you haven't given me the other ones. That's a big one, if not the biggest one.
Okay, yeah.
Imagine a physician walking in with a pile of things in their hands and then, whoops, dropped everything on the floor. You're like, oh, this is like, I'd be inclined to be, like I was jokingly saying my vasectomy doctor was joking. But it also left me with a weird feeling because I was like, don't be joking too much, right? Like I get what you're doing, trying to put me at ease, but and I made a joke about it on stage. If I start laughing and start giggling, do we really want my body moving up and down, giggling while he's doing stuff down there? Or if his joke is not good, if I don't like his joke, I'm like, I hope you're better at the arguably more important thing that I'm here for than you are with jokes, right? So it inserted new things in my mind.
Interesting.
Okay. So yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go through the other ones.
Yeah.
You can see how they relate. But that was the number 1 one. Number 2 is empathetic.
I value that.
Okay.
I value that. Yeah.
And the next one is similar, humane. So empathetic is understanding, where people are coming from. Humane is caring, compassionate, kind.
Yeah.
You like that? Now, here's one, personal. Okay, so the definition of this is the doctor is interested in me and is more than just a patient, interacts with me, and remembers me as an individual.
I think remembers me as an individual is a side thing. That's a lot to demand of a doctor. But doctor is interested in me more than just a patient, I think is very, very important. There's all these various podcasts I listen to with, medical special. There's a guy named Rangan Chatterjee. I don't know if you know who that is, Asif, or if his name makes you roll your eyes, but he's no longer. Do you know who that is?
No.
He talks about how many times asking questions about somebody's personal life resulted in these breakthroughs. So, for example, okay, your stress is you seem very stressed. So let's go through this, all the classics. Okay, you'll need this. Come to find out after a few questions about their home life. He was doing a thing where he was living in people's homes for a few weeks. Wow. He was brought into people's. So he was like, oh my God, this person's relationship with their wife or with their husband is so toxic that it is creating an insane amount of stress and anxiety for them. We don't have, in our sort of medical questioning, we don't have anything about what's your relationship with your partner like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so we never led them there. So I think doctor being more interested in me more than just a patient, I think in the interest of getting medical information and a bigger picture, I think that's valuable.
True. I agree. I think you have to be a bit careful about that. So, for example, like I see kids, so I don't often ask them about their partners, but you want to ask about their family life and stressors, school. Because again, if someone's coming to you with headaches, well, they could all be stress induced, right? Like that's certainly possible.
Sure.
But also might be a bit inappropriate though, Ali. Like, if I was an adult doctor and I see someone, whether they're male or female, tell me about your relationship with your partner. Oh, not that good, eh? Like I'm asking them out on a date.
You don't have to smile and give a little wink when you go, not that good, eh? Exactly. I know somebody who can help you with that. Yeah, you don't have to do all that. You could do it in a professional manner as well.
Exactly. No, I'm joking a little bit, but I think you have to be a bit careful. Sure. But the next one is being forthright. The doctor tells me what I need to know in plain language and in a forthright manner. The example they give is they don't give you Mickey Mouse answers, but they don't beat around the bush. Like you appreciate that?
I do. I very much so, yeah.
And I do that. And I also try and tell people, like, you know, I don't know. If I don't know something, so I don't know. Like, I'll look it up. Or sometimes, as happens on this podcast every single week, the medical community doesn't know. Like, there have not been studies that have been done. So we don't know what the best thing to do in your situation is. But here's the pros and cons of this. Here's the pros and cons of this. And, you know, and that leads into the next one, which is to be respectful. The doctor takes my input seriously and works with me. It says, lets me participate in my care, right? And so that's important too, because in the end, it's not the doctor who has to, you know, it's not me who has to take the medicine, right? Like it's the patient. And sometimes that's a kid or a teenager, right? So they have to be involved in their care. Well, the last one for this of these ideal behaviors is thorough. So the doctor's conscientious, persistent, kind of explains everything well. So I'm assuming, based on your previous experiences, that would be important to you as well.
I think so. And I think if you're thorough, it also means, you know, it connects to humanity and the empathetic nature also, and the personal nature, because you know, either you're following up as a doctor or the next time you come in, you say, okay, the last time we talked about this, how's this going? Or were you able to do this? I think that's great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And just to wrap up the second part of this episode, I'll talk about another set of interviews that were done, which I found were very interesting. And this is a bit more for the physicians who listen to us. So there's a big issue. We've talked about it before on the podcast about physician burnout, physician wellness, resilience, all these kind of topics, right? And we usually think about that as a physician issue, it's a hospital issue, it's a healthcare issue, but we don't really think about how it impacts the patients, because obviously if a physician is burnt out, they're not going to be doing those things we just talked about. They're not going to have those 7 qualities that we just were hoping for. But rarely have people asked patients what they think about wellness in their physician. So for example, this one article looked at interviews done with patients, and they asked, you know, can you tell if your physician is stressed or unwell? And they're like, yeah, their physical appearance, their general impression, you know, if they seem stressed or you know, hurried, and they do think about that, and they say that can affect their trust and their interactions and their desire to follow up care, right? If the person seems overly stressed or distracted or something. But the interesting is the patients were also quite empathetic to this. They realized that, like, being a doctor is a hard job, and they're empathetic and sympathetic to the fact that, you know, they have lots of competing priorities. Like, what if you had a patient die recently? That might be very difficult, and you might be dealing with that. So they're empathetic, and they actually, you know, have a nuanced understanding of how physicians work, which I don't think us as doctors really think like that. But of course, just like a physician, just like a patient wants to be treated as a human, to have that personal touch, I think patients also realize that you know, the physician is a person too, and they're not just this doctor who's going to, you know, prescribe me a medicine out the door, right? They recognize them as people too. So I thought that was an interesting study that was done.
Doctors are people too. Huh. You learn something every day.
So that's our episode for today. Let us know what you guys thought about the episode. drvcomedian@gmail.com, drvcomedian on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky. We are everywhere. Reach out to us. Let us know, what do you guys think about the studio? Have you watched that? What about your perceptions of doctors? Is there something we missed or research that you've heard about that you want us to cover? And what do you think about kids throwing popcorn at the Minecraft movie? I'm very curious to hear what you say about that. Let us know. Reach out to us. Ali, what do you got going on for end of May, beginning of June, or all of June even?
Well, very exciting. I'm going back to my birth province of New Brunswick. On May 31st, I'm part of a literary festival in Fredericton. Fredericton, you may remember, Asif, where I was born.
Yes.
Huh? And then you wouldn't remember because you weren't born yet, but your parents would know that. And then I'm doing a comedy show in Fredericton at this Charlotte Street Arts Center there. And I'm going to go back and see like where my parents immigrated to and where they lived on the University of New Brunswick campus and all that kind of stuff. I'm really looking forward to that. And a week later, I'm going to St. John, New Brunswick, which is where your parents lived in New Brunswick.
Yeah, my sister was born there.
Your sister was born there. And I'm going to be doing a series of 4 shows in June at the St. John Theatre Company, an amazing venue with my friend James Mullinger. And we're doing like a comedy extravaganza. So a mix of like storytelling and improv and stand-up comedy and probably roasting each other. And I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
All right. I'm sure people can check that out on your website.
They can. New Brunswick, here I come.
But before we go, just remember that although I'm a doctor, I'm not your doctor. Medical issues we talk about are for your interest and information only, and they're not medical advice. Please consult your medical professionals for actual medical advice. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.